Friday and welcome to another episode of Mavens of Manufacturing. I'm really excited to have Wesleyne Greer here. Thank you, Wesleyne, so much for stopping on by. How are you doing today?
I am doing lovely. I'm excited to chat with you today, Meaghan.
I am too. I always love watching your videos, not just because they have great information, but you always have, I think you have one of the best fashions out there on LinkedIn. You always look so great and you just have so much energy and so much knowledge. It's really great to see that positivity on LinkedIn and you pull people in. You're very, I don't want to say, I think charming is the right word, but you're very personable and you just pull people in and your positivity is contagious. So I'm really excited to have you. The first time that I saw you was on Gail's podcast, and I'm really excited to have this conversation. So before we dive into the questions that I have, I just want you to, introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and give us a little background information of how you entered into the world of manufacturing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that warm intro in my fashion. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I always start with I'm a recovering chemist. And the thing was, working in the lab, I kind of got into the jeans and t-shirt mode, but that wasn't really me. So as soon as I stepped into the world of sales, I kind of, put my hey, I want to wear a dress if I don't have to go into the plant today. And I'm wearing earrings because that's what I like to do. And I do think that being a woman in sales or manufacturing, you find your identity, and whatever you're comfortable with wearing or doing, you should absolutely do it.
Yeah.
And so I went from working in the petrochemical plant into sales. And I tell people when I got into sales, I finally figured out what I wanted to be when I grew up because I loved everything about it. It was absolutely amazing. And because I loved it so much, I made a really fast ascent from individual contributor to international sales manager. And as an international sales manager, it's like somebody dropped me in the middle of the ocean and said, swim. Now bring all these little fish with you. Come on, teach them how to swim too. And I was like, what are you talking about? And so I realized that there was this huge gap in the marketplace for organizations that teach sales training from a very technical standpoint, right? Because selling software, while it is not an easy job, it is very different than selling capital equipment that is six figures. And so that's really what we focus on. We focus on working with science, technology, engineering, and manufacturing companies on how to sell better and how to build stronger sales leaders.
I think that's really interesting too, because I've worked with a lot of different companies in marketing, and there's still this old way of doing things on the marketing side, and it's really hard to change, older owners' minds about what platforms to go on, what risks to take, and then some of the marketing departments are still siloed off from the sales team, which I never quite understood because it's like we're all on the same team. We should be working together so that we can sell these really great products and get the trust of our customers. So do you find that some of your conversations around, the tips that you have for sales team also revolve around the way that companies are marketing themselves too, and bridging the gap between the two teams?
Yes, I don't get into the middle of the sales marketing or sales operations fight. And what we do is we focus on, hey, as a sales organization, you guys are the nucleus. We have to ensure that we're reaching across the marketing and talking to operations. So if you say, hey, I have these 5 orders, the manufacturing plant isn't backed up. And hey, marketing team, you guys are doing a really good job of bringing these kind of people in, but let's tweak the messaging. Let's focus more on this. And when we have that infighting of, well, marketing isn't bringing us good leads, that's why sales are low, or sales doesn't know how to close the leads, that fighting doesn't benefit anyone, right? Because literally everyone in the organization is a salesperson. And what we have to realize is the stronger the allegiance between sales and marketing, the better it is for the business. Because when our marketing message is speaking directly to our ideal client profile, and that person pops up on the website and they are already educated, because marketing has done such a good job of helping them understand what we do and how we can help them. It makes the salesperson's job easier.
Absolutely. Real quick, John says hi. Hi, John. Thanks. Yes. And if you guys in the audience have questions as well too, feel free to type them in the comments and we'll get to your questions as well. So with Transformed Sales, I want to focus a little bit more on your company and, what inspired you to start that on your own. You saw these gaps that are in the market. So what makes your company unique from other, options available to teams who might be struggling within STEM fields?
So one thing that I know salespeople really despise is when you have a sales trainer come in and they're like, "Oh yeah, I sold things 2 years of my life." You're like, "Please go somewhere." Like whatever. So I like to tell people I've walked the walk. Like I have pictures with me in the hard hat on and my steel toe boots. They still live in my closet. So I know how to get my hands dirty. And I've done everything that I am asking you to do. I'm telling you how to do this from experience. And then when I'm working with those leaders, I'm like, I've been where you are. Like, I didn't get it. I was the top salesperson. And then I had all these salespeople who just didn't get it. And I showed them how to bring it along. And everything that we do, I like to say, is outside the box. So we're not cookie cutter. People are like, well, what kind of methodology do you use? Do you use this? Do you use that? I'm like, we take a little bit from here, a little bit from there. And it's really based on what you need as an organization. And I would say, finally, the thing that really sets us apart from the competition is the fact that we focus on that complex sale. And the complex sale is one that has a long sales cycle. There are multiple decision makers. And so we have to teach the salespeople how to talk to the person that may be using the equipment, the product, the service, as well as how to talk to their boss. And their boss has to then sell it to their C-level person. And then we have to get through purchasing, right? So we have to work through all those facets within the organization to really get business closed.
It's interesting that you brought that up too, because when I started out a couple of years ago, I worked with a CNC manufacturer, and I started getting more information about the CNC machines, and some of them are huge. And I never realized the amount of time it took for a company to make the decision, because it's an investment, right? Some of them are multi-million-dollar investments to get these really big machines to machine your products. And I was just fascinated on the process of from start to finish. And some conversations even lasted more than a year. Like it's a continuing back and forth, building a relationship, understanding the technology, what resources do I have if this, this part fails. And I couldn't imagine being a salesperson trying to sell something that massive. It would be a little intimidating for me. So when you go into some of these companies who not are just here in the United States, but on an international level, what are some of like the main things you try to, tell them, or like the top 5 tips maybe, or the top 3? What are those main things that you try to get them to do right away?
So the first thing that I like to do is I like to say, let's peel back the sales organization, right? So one thing that is really, really important is we don't give a prescription without diagnosing, right? It's just like going to the doctor and you say, my arm is broken. They're like, okay, great, we're going to amputate it. And you're like, whoa. What about, can I do a cast? Can I do physical therapy? Can I do all of these things? So that's the first thing that we do. We do an MRI of the organization so we can really understand what some of the challenges are. Because sometimes it could be that the product that you're trying to sell, you don't have the right kind of people there. Maybe your sales compensation plan isn't set up to support this long sales cycle or even a short sales cycle. So that's the first thing that we do. We understand how does everybody within the organization interact with each other, and what are the good things we're doing and what are some of the bad things we're doing. And then once you understand what's happening within the organization, you really have to say, okay, a strong, healthy pipeline has short, medium, and long-term deals. If everything in your pipeline is slated to close in 12 to 18 months, how are you going to make money for the next 12 months, right? So thinking outside the box a little bit. What can we sell? Service contracts? Can we sell spare parts? Can we business? Oh, my camera just went out again. What can we do to get more business from our existing clients? That's that short term. So let's tap into that. Then the medium term is, okay, we've gotten all these leads for marketing. Maybe we should try to actually qualify them instead of just saying they suck, right? That's what we should do. Let's actually look at these leads and let's figure out, talk to the marketing department and say, hey, where did they come from? How did they see us? Can you teach me how to use LinkedIn? Can you teach me how to write a case study, right? Like, teach me how to think a little bit more like a marketer and not just product focused. And then those long-term deals, those are the ones that are the multi-million-dollar deals or the multi-six-figure deals. And you just have to realize that it takes a longer time. But really, as we are going through and we're helping our customers, whether they're short, medium, or long-term types of sales, what we really need to understand is, don't just focus on your product. What are the problems? It's all about the problems your customers are facing. What are the problems they're having, and how can you help them solve them? And sometimes the challenge about this problem-based selling is that the problem they have today is not one that you can solve. And so it's your job as a salesperson to help them understand that.
Forgot to disconnect my phone from my computer. I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
So we have David Self on here as well, and he wants to know, you spoke about complex buying situations. Do you have any tips for getting your main contact or champion to bring the other stakeholders into the conversations, especially when the key contact needs to bring in a higher ranking colleague like a CEO or CFO who will have to sign off?
Ooh, this is a good one, David. So I always talk about, we should be targeting our internal champion. And our internal champion is typically not the person that you're thinking about. Your internal champion is a person within the organization that is the closest to the problem, right? So again, when we're talking about the problem that your product solves, who is the person closest to that? Right? So if I'm selling a CNC machine, it's going to be the person who is the supervisor of that floor, right? They have the problem impacts them the most. They don't have budget authority, but they have the biggest problem, right? And what we have to do is we have to help them understand how we can help them solve that problem. And once we help them understand how they can solve the problem, they will bring the right people to the table. And one of the things that people hate the most is, don't ask them, do you have decision authority? Do you have the authority to sign the purchase order? Can you cut me a check? That's the fastest way to get a hot lead cold, right? You can ask them a simple question: who else needs to be involved in this process? You can ask them that if you would like. When you get ready to present your proposal or do your demo, you can say, would it be good if your boss joined us? Does your boss need to be there? Or who is your boss? Like, ask them questions. You need to really dig deep to understand what the situation is within the organization, and get deep with the internal champion, but don't only focus right there. Because if they don't have the decision authority, they don't have the budget authority, you have to make sure you ask the right questions so they bring the right people to the actual meeting. I had a meeting with someone yesterday and they were like, oh yeah, I want my CEO to come to this. I didn't have to ask for the CEO. They're just like, I need my CEO to come, because they realize that if I want to get this done, I need my CEO there. So I hope that helped, David. So you said you're famous now. You are.
Gail's on here too. Wow's and Too Fab Maven. So much value. So many of these live shows with some spectacular guests. Thank you, Gail. It's such a pleasure having you on today. Yeah. She's a great podcast too. I mentioned her before. So, with STEM fields, there's a lot of technology that's involved, as you mentioned before. And, automation is a thing. There's cybersecurity stuff, IT, digital twins. There's a lot of advancements that are happening on a continuing basis. So what makes the science of selling STEM different from other sectors or industries that you can think of? And, if you're a new salesperson coming into this field, what would your advice be to them to kind of help prep them on getting ready for all of that technical information that they might need to know or kind of get familiar with so that they can be a good salesperson?
So one of the key things is that we, in this field of STEM, the products that we're selling, the services that we're selling, they're a little more complex. I use the word complex. What does complex mean? It's like we're selling stuff that really smart people have made to other really smart people, right? And so sometimes we mistaken and we think that, okay, I'm selling this very fancy equipment to an engineer and they get it, but they don't. Because you may be selling something to a mechanical engineer that has nothing, they have no clue about the chemistry of the chemicals you're selling them, right? So, what is really important for new salespeople to do is you have to be curious. So one of the first things a new salespeople person does when I'm working with an organization is I make them do a win-loss report. And so literally they go out to customers that people have won business with and that has lost business within the territory that they're taking over within their book of accounts. And we give them a list of questions and it's like, I'm the new kid on the block, so you can't blame me for anything. I just want to learn. And as they learn and they get into the customer's world, a lot of times those deals that were lost, people are like, oh, you actually care about what I am doing? Because one thing people love to do is talk about themselves. And so when you're able to have them talk about themselves and talk about the challenges and why they chose the competitor instead of you, that helps you understand the landscape. And another thing a new salesperson should do is they should do a SWOT analysis. You need to know your competitors. Like, you're not the only act in town. Understand your competitors and don't forget the competitor of doing nothing, of not changing, of them keeping using whatever technology, whatever solution that they currently have in place.
So there's a lot of disruptions going on right now, and it's really affecting, how manufacturing is moving forward and progressing forward. So we have all of these automation changes happening. Some companies are adapting the new technologies right away because they have the budget for it. Some aren't because, they still don't understand all of the technical information behind it or how automation fits within what they're doing. We have the supply chain disruptions. We have inflation going on here in the United States. We have the workforce shortage. So with all of these things going on, some teams are really struggling getting those sales. So how does your team help kind of veer around some of those disruptions and still have them be successful in these hard times?
Really, again, when we are out there as salespeople, I immediately have the teams that I'm working with, we change our titles. We're not salespeople, we are consultants, right? And our goal is to serve, not to sell. So first you have to have a paradigm shift. And that paradigm shift is my job is to serve my prospects, to serve my customer. So how can I help them? And sometimes what you're doing, you may be like, oh, I can't affect their employee shortages, or I can't affect their supply chain issues. And that's why you start with the things that are important to them. What are the problems that they're having? So for instance, I was working with a customer and they're a distributor. And so they sell all of their things like in bundled up packages. And they were getting pushed back because they're like, yeah, pricing. And so we had to dig deeper. Okay, so you're saying the price is too high, but let's talk about some of the reasons you feel that way. They're like, man, we have to use union labor. And union labor is so expensive. And because of that, and everybody who works with union labor, that they take a break, they take a break. You know, they do kind of do what they want to do. And so what we had to do was flip that conversation. So we said, okay, if you buy our bundle package, your labor force doesn't have to take the 5 hours to put it together. It only takes them 1 hour. So how much does that 4 hours of labor save you? And so flipping the conversation to the things that people are thinking about. So we took it away from our product. We took it away from the cost of our products, and we flipped it to how much they're saving by using the product and things that they're thinking about.
That's really cool. So you have a podcast, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, and you recently rebranded it. Do you want to go into a little detail about what your podcast is about and why you made the decision to rebrand it and some of the conversations that you have on there and where people can go to listen to it?
Yes, I rebranded it to the Transform Sales Podcast because I like to say every good coach should have a coach. If you are out there and you don't have a coach or you don't have a mentor or somebody that you're talking to, then you are missing out on a great wealth of development for yourself. So I actually have someone who helps me with my podcast, so a podcast coach. And we were having the conversation and he said, well, if you changed your name to the Transform Sales Podcast, it would be better for your brand recognition, right? If they know your company is Transform Sales and then they are searching and they're like, oh, she has a podcast too. So that was really the reason that I changed it. And I had more of a cartoon face on it. And they were like, you know, like kind of like you said, you're beautiful. Just use yourself. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So I just have a picture of me on there now. But the focus is still the same. We are still talking about the science of selling STEM. And really, I interview people that are in science, technology, engineering, manufacturing, because for me, M is manufacturing, not mathematics, and distribution. And we talk to salespeople who have sales managers and CEOs that have lived the life. So they've come up the ranks as a salesperson. They've lived that grunt life and they're like, this is what I'm doing now. And we share stories on things that they've done to help them in their career, how they've grown, pitfalls that they've gone into. And really, that's what it's all about.
What, from all of your conversations that you're having through that podcast, what are you most excited about? And what are some of the things that you're seeing coming up as trends that, you know, deal with the things that you're helping your customers with? Like what are you excited about?
You know, I'm excited that in the last season, I was able to interview a lot more women sales leaders. So that really excited me because, again, in this very technical field, there aren't as many women and there really aren't as many women in sales. So being able to interview so many women in sales leadership was very exciting for me. And I think that some of the trends that I'm seeing now are a lot of sales managers are doing too much, right? And so they're doing the work for the salespeople. And a lot of times it's like it takes something within their career to shift that paradigm, right? For them to realize I don't have to do the work for them. I need to lead them to teach them how to do these things. And so that, as well as mental health. So really tapping into the effect the sales profession can have on your mental health and how to kind of break it away and break things down. So I would say those are the things that I'm really excited about talking about.
I really like that you mentioned mental health because manufacturing was a place where it wasn't really discussed a lot and it was swept under the rug. And over the past 3 or 4 years, I think I've seen an increase in, you know, resources to help people who might be struggling and just more conversations and more transparency about it. And I think that's really helpful because I've known a lot of people within the sector that struggled with that. And I was fortunate to have one boss who she was on it. She's just like, you know, if you need to take a day off because you're just struggling, take that day off. And it was refreshing to have that advocate for that. The other thing is too, I agree with you. I'm really excited to see more and more women coming into this sector and taking on these leadership roles. Because, you know, when I first started back in 2008, there were women in leadership roles, but it wasn't as many as you're seeing today. So that's really refreshing to see, especially with all of these skills gaps happening in the workforce shortage. So I hope we're on the right track to keep recruiting more and more women in these technical roles as well. Because, initially where I was seeing them was just in the marketing department, and they can offer so much more. So that's great. One of the other questions I wanted to ask you is, you mentioned LinkedIn, and I've had this conversation before with a sales guy, and he was actually more progressive than some of the other salespeople that I've talked to, but he's just like, it's really hard to get my team who have been in this sector for 40 years to adapt LinkedIn and other tools like it. And he's like, it's like pulling teeth. Do you have any ideas or suggestions for teams who want to use LinkedIn or other platforms like it to really encourage their sales teams to connect with their customers that way? Or should they completely abandon it and ignore it? Because I don't think that would be the right way to do it. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
So I would say that you really have to, one thing that a lot of sales leaders miss is you really have to teach people. You literally have to break down the little tiny bits and pieces. And I don't know, Kurt Anderson, he's my partner in crime. We do a lot of sessions together, and we actually teach manufacturing, like how literally the itty bitty bits and pieces of how you build your profile and going through. And then we show them results, right? Like a lot of my business comes from LinkedIn. I would say probably like 50, maybe even 60%. And I'm not spamming people. I'm not using a pitch slap where I'm like connecting and pitching them. I'm literally kind of like you said, I'm just sharing things that are on my brain, and I'm sharing knowledge, and I'm sharing things, and people are like, hey, Wesleyne, I just read this post that you wrote, and it had me thinking about blah, 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 right? And so they come to you. And really, at the end of the day, what you're doing on LinkedIn is you are sharing, you are building your thought leadership. And as you build your thought leadership, then people are going to be like, wow, this person really knows what they're talking about. I want to do business with them. And in a product-based field, it is like, what is the benefit of it? My customers aren't on there. But I will tell you, sometimes I get on calls with people, like there's this VP of HR at this Fortune 100 company. She's like, Wesleyne, every time I get on LinkedIn, I see something you're talking about. I'm like, man, you're just a leader whisperer. She's never liked anything. She's never commented on anything. I'm like, you know my LinkedIn? Are we even connected? So even though you don't feel like people are seeing things, they are seeing it. And for a leader, the way to get your people to start is give them, literally show them how to do it. Say, these are the elements of a strong LinkedIn profile, and give them a KPI. I want you to post 1 time a week. Okay, now we got that down. Now let's post twice a week. Like, go find something that your clients, your prospects will be interested in, and just post that, write about that, or reshare something from the company page. Don't make it hard for them to get started, but do hold them to a standard.
Yeah, I agree. I've been in several marketing departments where it was really a big struggle to try to get some of the sales team on board with just posting once a day. I went as far to as writing out the posts, posting it on the company page, and then I would take different images with the link to the post and then send out a mass email and say, okay, here's a variety of different photos. Here's the text. Just copy and paste it and put it on your LinkedIn page. And that was even hard sometimes to get them to agree with it, because, they just think it's another task for them to do in their busy life. So you really have to make it fun, I think. There was one company where they made a contest out of it. So whoever was like reposting and liking and commenting, we would keep track of it. And then the winner would get like a prize or something, or recognition for it. So if you make it a contest, it seems to attract more people. Like, what are those pools that people do for football? Or
yeah. You have to, the thing is, you have to really realize, hey, LinkedIn is a strategy that we want to employ, but are there other things that are more important for us to focus on right now? Like, and even when you think about your sales team, if you have like people who are doing what they need to do, I always like to say, I just leave them alone. Like, I'm not going to bother you. I'm not going to try to make you change too much. I just want you to keep doing what you're doing, but I'm still going to support you. I'm not going to ignore you, which is what happens sometimes. So either those top performers get ignored or all the attention goes to them. And then on the other side, your low performers, the middle of the pack, the people who are struggling to hit sales, you can't tell me no because you're not hitting your numbers. So like, if you don't want to do this, then maybe you should go find another job. But literally, if you're not hitting your numbers, you can't tell me I'm not going to do something. And right now, in a lot of organizations, people are hitting their numbers, but their leaders know that they're not working to their maximum potential. And so challenge them to do something a little bit more and get them out of their comfort zone.
That's great advice. We've been getting a lot of comments. Great answer. Thanks. You need to help them help themselves. Assume they do not have the authority. Ask great questions. We have Shannon. This is a wealth of knowledge and also some great reminders. Thank you. Meaghan, nothing compares to a boss leader that understands and supports that we are also human. Love that. We have Margot. Good morning from Los Angeles. Thank you for joining us from Los Angeles. I'm a little bit jealous of your weather over there because I live in the Midwest. Ian Stork. I'm going to call him out. Ian is a great videographer and photographer within manufacturing. Mm-hmm. So any company, because, part of the sales journey, I think, with companies is really telling the company's story. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's really hard if you don't have the great images or videography to go with it. And Ian, since he has experience in manufacturing, he knows what to capture and when to capture it. He always picks the right music, and his shots are just amazing. So yes, I'm pitching him because he does great work, and I always try to help people who do great work within there. So reach out to him, follow him if you need video stuff or photography, because he's amazing. Go check him out. And then Courtney from UR sent out text and images as well. I tend to just be out stirring up social media trouble already anyway. Don't get in too much trouble, Courtney. And thank you for your hat, too. You sent me, I got to take a photo later. Courtney sent me a UR hat, so I'm excited to wear that around. Well, Wesleyne, this has been a great conversation and really helpful. And I know that everyone listening has probably been taking notes, and because you hit a lot of great points. And one of the things that I like to do here on Mavens is try to get you connected with who you need to get connected to, or, answer a big ask that you might have for anyone that's listening. So if you do have one ask, what is your ask for our audience?
I would say my big ask would be to connect with me on LinkedIn. I put a lot of good content out there, valuable content. And my goal with my content is to really educate, to serve, to help you become better sales leaders or better sales teams. And at any point, I am happy to have a conversation with anyone. I am all about motivating sales teams that are stuck in the mud. So those are things that I love to do. But yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn.
Do you speak at any events?
I do. I haven't done as many in-person speaking, but I'm actually headed up to the Northeast, and I'll be doing some speaking up there.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Wesleyne, for joining us. I really appreciate it. To everyone that joined us today, thank you. I hope you have a great weekend. I'm getting ready to not try to cry so much with my daughter graduating on Sunday. She's my first baby, so really excited. And come back next week for another episode. We have a really great guest who's going to provide some tips on how to present information in a fun way when you're doing presentations. So thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
This has been another episode of Mavens of Manufacturing. Subscribe for more and make sure to tune in next time.